Hello folks, and welcome to OurGame with myself, Shane Stapleton, as always joined by Michael Verney, and we're brought to you by ogreretro.com. Use the promo code OurGame and you get 15% off. There was plenty of stuff happening over the weekend, Michael, whether it was Championship or League. We saw some shocks. Wicklow getting through, Waterford beating Tipperary, the way Cavan turned it around against Monaghan late on in that rush of goals. But you know what happened on Saturday evening in Thurles between Clare and Kilkenny, the final game of the league. Geez, that was a bit of a cracker.
Yeah, it was a bit of a slow burner at the start, maybe the first 15 or 20 minutes. But once it got going, I just love, I often said it to you, you can have your different strategies and styles and whatever. But once it got to the second half, it was like every puck out was long. Every puck out had to be won. Everyone was pushing up. There was full pressure being applied all over the pitch. And yeah, it was a brilliant second half. And even Kilkenny were probably on life support a small bit, and then Owen Cody breathed a bit of life into them again, and it set up for a brilliant finale. Because before that, I kind of thought, this is a lot of the hallmarks of the 2022 final, where Waterford got all the goals basically, and Cork were able to keep hanging on their coattails, but every time they got close to them, Waterford got a goal. It was similar enough the other night, but Kilkenny made it really, really tight down the stretch, and it was just a really exciting game. Even the penalty at the end, and the surface around Semple and around that area probably wasn't hectic. I don't know if TJ Reid would have hit it into the ground, or maybe if Billy Drennan would have either, but Owen Cody did, and it nearly stopped. And it was just mad to think Eibhear Quilligan had stopped the penalty and then had no idea where the ball was, and just added to great drama. Yeah, it was a great way to finish. What I think hasn't been a half bad league now, to be fair, and better than previous years anyway, definitely.
Yeah, I kind of felt that it was more down to Cody mishitting the penalty than actually, the surface being that big of a deal. Obviously, it does take a nice bit of the zip out of the ball, but I just felt like he straight up mishit it, which is, unusual enough for him, because generally he's very accurate as a ball striker. One of the things that stood out to me hugely from this game, I have to say, was the first half, how wasteful Kilkenny were, and how that just changed so utterly in the second half. So, of course, Clare were leading at half-time, and it was 1-8 to 9. But I remember watching the game and being like, right, John Donnelly has missed an absolute sitter of a chance here. I think he was about 55 yards out. That was quite bad. Billy Ryan had missed one before that. It may have even dropped short, his one, or went wide. You had Billy Drennan missing one over the shoulder, and it kind of tamely went wide. Adrian Mullen, who was brilliant, he had 4 wides in the first half. Paddy Deegan had another bad one at another stage, and Drennan on the freeze, he missed a couple, and I was looking at it and I was like, what's going on here? And by half time, Kilkenny's score and return, their efficiency, if you want to call it that way, was 39%. And, it's not that Clare were brilliant in the first half, but obviously they took their goal chance and they only had one and they took it. Whereas Kilkenny had, I would have said, 2 good chances at goals, and there was a block on Mullen. That was a brilliant block by Conor Lean. And then Owen Cody had the ball whipped away from him by Adam Hogan, which is obviously brilliant. But there was 2 other chances. Remember that time that Billy Ryan, he stood up John Conlon and ended up taking steps. So I consider that a bit of a half goal chance. And there was another time that a ball broke in the Clare area. And by the way, I think at times they looked a little bit ropey under high long ball going into their own area. But I suppose that's Kilkenny for you. And the ball came back to John Donnelly, and he threw the ball back out to, I think, Luke Hogan. Now, 50-50 with a lot of these things. Was it a catch? Was it a throw, or was it not? But basically, it ended up that they didn't take any sniffs of the goal that they had, whereas at the other end, Clare had one, and it was Mark Rogers running through, and he was a real threat, kind of running between the lines. But look, it was 39% scoring efficiency in the first half from Kilkenny. In the second half, they scored 12 of 14. so which is 86%. So that's quite an insane change over the course of the two halves.
Yeah, that's mad. They should have been further up in the first half, and then they got hit with the goal obviously before the break, and kind of nearly amazingly ended up going in kind of down at half time. I would also say the one that Adrian Mullen tapped over where Billy Ryan was on his shoulder was probably a half goal chance if he passed it to him and carried it. That was probably a goal chance as well. Hogan's flick / block on Cody was outstanding, and just a couple of just a few words on him. Like, I don't know, it seems like he's becoming a bit of nearly a folk hero as well. Almost when he comes out with a ball, it's of great value to the team. It's of great value to the support as well. It seems to be nearly more value than nearly any other player nearly at this stage. Definitely in around defence. Maybe John Conlon aside. He was outstanding the other night. It's just
constantly going in, looking for the hurley and throwing the arms up in the air. Like they're going to stop giving frees to him because at times it's ridiculous the ones he's getting frees for.
Yeah, to be fair, Johnny Murphy kind of blew for steps, I think, but he looked for a free just before that.
End. Yeah, at the very end, he looked for a free as well, dived on the ground, and the ref got a free against him. And like this has to be stamped out. Referees given, like if you run into contact, you are going to get contact. Every contact doesn't mean a free. Like sometimes you might get knocked in the head, but if you've dived into somebody head first, sometimes that's just going to be the price you pay for doing that. Refs need to stop giving these frees for nothing.
Yeah, no, and I think they generally have gotten a lot better. Like King Kenny doesn't really get them anymore because he's nearly become synonymous with them. Hogan will be synonymous with them. But that aside, that element of his game aside, like he was brilliant on Owen Cody and he was attacking every ball and coming out with ball, driving out with ball. Just a nightmare to mark because like when he comes out with that ball and he's nearly fist pumping and he's putting the forward on the back foot. And it was Cody only really got a bit of joy when he went away from him and went out to pitch. I'd say in future, if they were playing Kilkenny in a big game, or if Hogan ties somebody up inside and he goes out and gets a bit of joy, maybe they'll put him following him straight away. Because he's quite good on the ball and he's dangerous going forward himself. He's a lot better maybe than before. And like already this year, he's he's played a crucial role in Mary I win the Fitzgibbon, and now he's got a league with Clare as well. It was funny though. I did think like Jarlath Burns made a great like impassioned speech again before the presentation of the cup, and they I just thought Conor Cleary gave him that, like, and I don't mean that in a bad way. He didn't want he probably didn't want to be seen as Clare been running away with themselves or anything like that. Like, I don't know if he even smiled kind of raising the trophy, which was unusual, but just the proximity of it all. Yeah, that was it basically. Yeah, the proximity of it all and the fact that from that game last Saturday night, 15 days later, they have Limerick coming. They will have enjoyed it, but their feet will be firmly back down on the ground now.
And look, I think Adam Hogan's an excellent player, but the trend, there must have been like 7 or 8 times through the course of the game where he ran in looking for that contact and throw the arm up in the air or pull the opponent's hurley down on top of him. And look, he's not the only player that does it. And I'm not saying he is, and I'm not having a go at Clare in general, but that trend was there throughout that game. Well, we get to a couple of the comments here. Joseph Nash says, let's call a spade here. As things stand, Limerick will do well to get a draw in Ennis. Clare have real momentum, Limerick don't. Pat McMahon says, referees need a refresher course on when to apply the black card and when not. The decision to award a penalty and black card to Rodgers was beyond shocking. And do you know what? I think that penalty decision in the non-penalty decision in the Monaghan Cavan game when Hamill was going through and he was definitely in a goal scoring position, more so than what we saw for Kilkenny in this game. So I have to say there's real issues around this because it's subjective. It's like, was it a goal scoring opportunity? Was it within a certain area? There's an awful lot, kind of hanging around, and a referee could be, after sprinting around for 60 minutes. So it's a very tough job.
You also have to take into account where the last defender is, or if there's another defender behind him or whatever. I just thought Rodgers was, I would say, like a swipe trying to get a flick, but it didn't look particularly cynical to me now, I have to say. And I know some Clare folk are up in arms about how they've gotten 3 kind of big black cards in the last while. None of which may have actually been a black card, but to me, like, not in a month of Sundays is that a black card? Like the Tommy Walsh takedown on, was it Aidan McCarthy?
It was.
Yeah,
So he
like
wasn't the last man. It wasn't inside the area, but
that's as cynical as they come.
cynicism.
That's as cynical as they come. Like
That
it's
should be a
so
penalty.
cynical.
Isn't this why? Look, and I know you largely agree with me, but for a long time I've been saying cynical foul anywhere on the pitch and it's a penalty because it only ever happens when a goal opens up. And if you say anywhere on the pitch, people will say, "Well, what if you're on your own 14?" It doesn't happen up there. But just on the off chance that a team is trying to make sure there's no counter attack and no goal scored, it will just keep the game honest.
Well, I'm not sure if I agree with you as far back as you're saying, but definitely.
Does it ever happen? Does a rugby tackle ever happen in a team's own half?
I don't recall it in football. I don't recall it in hurling. I do recall it a bit in football. All right.
And if it did, is it only ever to stop a counter attack where the other team needs a goal?
It's at the end of a game. It's in the dying minutes of a game to stop momentum being built up, and the possibility of a goal scoring chance.
So what would the case be against it then? Against this rule suggestion?
The case against it is I'm not necessarily saying it's a bad rule, but I can just guarantee you it's a million miles away from ever being brought in because of how radical it is. That's all.
Well, it makes too much sense.
So I'm trying to form a bit of a middle ground that they might actually look at, whereas they won't look at that. Like Jesus, like we had a motion defeated at the weekend for camogie players to wear shorts in matches. Like that's how far away suggested.
Yet they brought in the ridiculous advanced mark. So sometimes things that seem a little bit that don't necessarily work on the face of it do go through. So why not something that makes total sense?
Maybe so. I don't see it happening, but bring it like that was to me. That's exactly why the black card was brought in. That type of tackle, he knew exactly what he was doing. Rogers, I didn't think was the same. And in fairness, Clare dealt well. We've been down a man for the last couple of minutes, and there was a fair bit of pressure on them as well. Yeah. A nice bit of pressure on them. But it was that kind of gripping finale probably that we all wanted. And I don't know, like, what were your thoughts when, it came out that TJ was missing? I kind of was thinking Clare have to win this game now. I was kind of thinking, and then you're kind of thinking Kilkenny are probably going to have maybe a few areas where they're going to have deficiencies, and it kind of proved that way. And like even the free taking was. Yeah, the free taking was disappointing. Owen Cody's frees were good when he went on him, aside from the penalty. Billy Drennan had a tough afternoon, and no point in saying any different. And they just needed that kind of calm and influence there, and they didn't have it.
In terms of the TJ Reid, not being available to play, I was getting ready for a league game myself, so I wasn't aware of that at the time. So I had to go and watch the game kind of after the fact. But yeah, you did look at it and think, right, from open play here, you're getting a bit out of John Donnelly, of course. He's a player that you and I have liked for a long time. Billy Ryan was showing a bit of a threat, but maybe not kind of getting the scores at the end of it. So you've got Adrian Mullen, who, those wides aside, he lights it up. He's an absolutely integral player. You've got Owen Cody, brilliant. The way he kind of solos through, the way he's scored a goal, the way he's trying to set up another goal chance. Who did he set up the goal chance for in the first half?
Mullen.
It was with Mullen. Remember when he soloed through, and then he little stick pass over the top that Mullen allowed to bounce. Brilliantly allowed to bounce.
Did it well, yeah.
Yeah, that was quality. So I was just thinking, okay, they have those two lads and not enough other lads are really making the ball stick. Now, it's very early in the careers of Luke Hogan and Billy Drennan, so they can come again. And obviously TJ Reid will step back into the team. And I think Mossy Keown has, fairly laid down a marker that I need to be starting now for the rest of the year because he's such a handful. What did he score? 3 from play? He won 4. A free or 2. Was a 4 from play. Scored at least one free also. I did feel like Mullen and Cody were carrying the baton a little bit too much on their own, and they didn't have enough around them. So that would probably be a bit of a concern heretofore anyway, but certainly going forward. And did you feel like just looking at other areas of the pitch, and the way sometimes it would pan over to TJ Reid and you'd see Mikey Butler beside him and you're like, right, Butler has to come into this team as well. And because Shane Murphy has made such a good impression, I feel we're on the same page with Shane Murphy. He's been excellent, and I'd imagine he has his place for championship now, or certainly starting the championship. That it might be a case that he goes out to the half back line, and maybe with Paddy Deegan and David Blanchfield, and then Mikey Butler will slip into the full back line as well. And they might feel like they have their 6 back there. Malloy probably didn't have his greatest game ever, but he's shown a bit of potential this year. And Cian Kenny, to be fair to him, he's starting to settle into that midfield. I'm not saying any player is dominating midfield for 70 minutes. It doesn't really happen, but it's probably up in the forward line where they probably need a little bit more.
They need a bit more in the forward line, but I would have question marks about probably the long-term centre back and the midfield pairing, which I've probably had question marks about for a good while.
How does that manifest itself, Michael? Just for you.
Say that again.
How does that manifest itself? The issues that you're saying, midfield, half back line, how does it manifest itself?
Yeah, I thought when Mark Rodgers obviously been playing centre forward throughout the league. He missed 2 early, but he had his hands on a heap of scores.
He actually missed 4 in the first half. He scored 1, but yeah, I agree, he was good.
Yeah, a couple more of them go over, and maybe the plight I would say Kilkenny have at 6 is highlighted a bit more. So in the last 2 All-Ireland finals, Richie Reid has started 6 and has probably had some trouble in both finals, particularly last year. I would say on Cian Lynch, and Paddy Deegan had his troubles at wing back in the 22 final. Was much better last year on Hegarty. At midfield, they've been, I would say, generally been overpowered and a bit overrun the last couple of years, and it's been a bit of a kind of a movable feast. Now Cian Kenny, to me, he's changed his game. He looks like more of a forager now, which you kind of need to be in around there. And he was the one kind of coming up with like a lot of dirty ball and balls squirting out of a break. He was kind of coming away with it. But like Jordan Malloy was thrown in there in the semi-final after probably a nice little injury layoff. And while it went well that day, like, are we on, like, will he start the next day? I'm not sure. Will Conor Fogarty go back in? Will they go with the tried and tested, the kind of the war dog in around the middle of the field, even though he mightn't have the same juice in his legs maybe that he would have had before? I don't know if 6 is the best spot at Intercounty for Paddy Deegan, but I don't know if they have a realistic 6 either. Like, probably Hugh Lawler is probably their 6, but he's like the best 3 or one of the best 3s in the country. So it's kind of a tricky one, but they can't go and play, to me, like they can't go and play Limerick in a knockout game later on this year if it does manifest itself, and go with what they've gone with before. I wouldn't be that surprised if it was Mikey Butler and Shea Murphy as the 2 cornerbacks, and Tommy Walsh potentially could miss out, maybe. I would have doubts about 6, and I'd have doubts about 8 and 9 as well.
Yeah, just in terms of hype then, Adrian McGrath says, the Clare man, lads want to get their heads out of their backsides if they think anyone in Clare or Limerick is buying nonsense about April 21st. It's 50-50, the same as it always is, in the best rivalry in hurling. Wow, the best rivalry in hurling. It's
the best modern day rivalry the last couple of years.
Yeah, do you know what it probably is? Their matches have been absolutely absorbing. But I did want to talk about the goal. Like later on, Clare obviously trying to protect the lead. And they had their own 3 goals through Aidan McCarthy twice and David Fitzgerald, who, of course, definitely took 10 steps.
Oh, stop. If he'd taken a tap on the hurl before he
it should
turned
have been
back to his
disallowed
left.
straight up. Like, if Billy Ryan wasn't allowed to take his shot, why should David Fitzgerald be allowed?
The thing about it is as well, if a back even goes to take the colour of those steps, he's pulled. 100% he's pulled. I thought once he turned back onto his left, I couldn't believe he wasn't pulled, to be honest with you.
And you'd have to, like, Richie Reid, he's working hard to try and keep with him the whole game and stay disciplined and not dive in. He's done everything right there, and he's been punished by the rules not being applied. Now, I actually think Johnny Murphy had a pretty good game in every hurling match, especially one as physical as that, because, like, it was frenetic, wasn't it? Some games you watch and lads can poke the ball around and they can turn and take their time a little bit. In this, there was no time anywhere. So I thought Johnny Murphy did pretty well, given the amount of players out there looking to find an edge all the time. But I feel very sorry for Richie Reid. And obviously, I never feel sorry for Kilkenny. But in that situation, I felt a little bit sorry for them, because it was 10 steps. Like, it's supposed to be 4 to 5, whatever that means. But it was definitely 10.
Yeah, no. Once he turned back, he had to be pulled for me. I see a comment coming in there saying that Hugh Lawler was found out by Shane O'Donnell in the second half. I actually thought he did reasonably well, given the acre that was in front of him. And O'Donnell was sharp. Funny, actually, O'Donnell actually tried to buy one of those head high ones midway through the second half, but he fell himself. I don't know if you noticed that. He was 100%. You could see the hands getting ready to go up. And I think, like, we've talked about a couple of other players trying to do it as well. I think either referees start pulling them doing it, or maybe players that are in a defensive position at that time become a bit cuter and just don't allow contact and force them to take their 5 or 6 steps and play the ball or whatever it is, because it is a big winning a free at your own 45 or your own 65 or something like that is such a big bonus now to your team. You have to be so careful. But I thought Johnny Murphy was generally quite good. I thought the black card was wrong, and I thought the decision for David Fitzgerald's goal to stand was wrong, and there was maybe 1 or 2 frees mid to late second half that kept Kilkenny in it a small bit, but generally I thought he was quite good.
Yeah, there was another point I wanted to make, and that was the impact of the long puckouts. That, like, remember when we were talking about the league semi-final, I was saying that Clare were getting an awful lot of change from Tipperary on the long puckouts, that Tip had nobody to command them, and you'd end up in situations where players would go up one-handed swiping, and Clare were very good at getting lads in for the break. I thought the same was the case in this. And if you look at the goal that Aidan McCarthy scored towards the end, 3 Kilkenny players all went up for the one ball, and the ball broke to David Fitzgerald, who's obviously such a strong physical player. He was able to turn and pop it off for McCarthy to finish brilliantly with the batted finish. But there was a few times that I thought that Kilkenny struggled under that high ball. To be fair, like I've already mentioned it, that it happened at the other end. Like, if you've got players that are big enough and good enough in the air that can cause pandemonium, you've got a great advantage there. Like, even towards the end, like I think Peter Duggan maybe won a ball or 2 out towards the side, and just it's not like Kilkenny could go up and pluck ball out of the sky the whole time, because Clare just have a lot of players who are imposing.
Big time. And it's a natural enough advantage, but not every big man is good in the air. It's obviously something you have to develop a lot throughout the younger stages of your career. But I think Clare are kind of realising that, when push comes to shove in games, and particularly when you're trying to beat a Kilkenny or a Limerick, the teams that have been really towards the latter stages of the championship the last couple of years, in the last few minutes, you need somebody that can do something like that, or at least break even on high balls. And that's probably one of the reasons why Duggan is out there now as well. But yeah, and like even I thought they got more joy out of Kilkenny than vice versa at the other end anyway. And obviously Kilkenny were missing their best ball winner in TJ, but still, someone we didn't mention as well is that was missing and will be back soon is Mikey Carey from a Kilkenny point of view, and he definitely comes into that puzzle somewhere, whether it's maybe at 7 or maybe as a second midfielder. I definitely think he comes in there.
Yeah, I suppose like he just needs to get back to this. I suppose the state he was at before he left for the year. Like, if he can get back to that level, he does step back into the team. I thought Peter Duggan was very good as a ball winner, a worker. There was a couple of times in the first half where he just made really good impacts in terms of frustrating the Kilkenny players coming out with the ball. I think he was the one who forced maybe Jordan Malloy into 3 catches at one stage. And then he also came in hard on Tommy Walsh. Tommy Walsh was trying to burst out. Remember the time Walsh ended up just clearing the ball anywhere and it went out over the sideline, plus his hurley got broken at the same time. So, like, sometimes you'd say, right, is Duggan scoring enough? But he's given Clare so much in terms of like making the ball stick and turning players over, or at least frustrating them.
And you remember that touch? The ball was played across the goal, and I know nothing came out of it, or didn't get a score out of it. But that was beautiful. I was kind of thinking, geez, he's going to do something 2018 drawing game against Galway here, something similar, because the first touch was outrageous. You need different types of players in your forward line in particular, and he definitely offers them something different. And even David Fitzgerald was like so much quieter than he had been in any other game throughout the league, but he still made a couple of big plays, albeit the goal should have been disallowed, but he still made a couple of big plays, and he had a big hand in the goal, the third goal as well.
But is it not typical David Fitzgerald that he can be quiet for spells and then all of a sudden he decides a game in 69 minutes quiet, but then 4 or 5 moments that last 10 to 15 seconds and he scored a goal like he has here, and he's also set one up, and I'm pretty sure he scored a point from play as well.
Yeah,
but he's just one of those sort of players.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah, I suppose I'm more based on what I saw throughout every other game in the league, where there was probably 4 or 5 kind of moments, or 5 or 6 maybe moments. He was, Richie Reid actually kept him relatively quiet, I would have said the other day.
Would you see many changes to that Clare team for championship? Of course, if Tony Kelly is fit, he starts. outside of that, does Shane O'Donnell go straight in? Does David McInerney take the place of, for example, Keane Galvin? Or do they stick with the lads who have been playing?
I think O'Donnell definitely starts. I
Darren
don't
Lohan,
think.
does he stay in?
Oh, I think so. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. McInerney, that'll be touch and go. The fact he got a few minutes the other day would mean he's obviously very, very close to full fitness. I don't think Kelly will start the first round against Limerick, to be honest with you. And going down through his history, Shane O'Donnell is very unique in the sense that he can play no games for a couple of months, no competitive action, just come in and be kind of seamless enough. Like even some things didn't come off of what he was doing the other night, but his touch was sharp. His movement was very, very sharp as well. I've always thought Kelly was best with a run of games, free from injury, and he gets up ahead of steam. So I probably see him coming on that evening in Ennis. They might name him, but I don't know. I don't think he'd start. I don't know if he can force his way in at this minute, at this moment in time. I don't know how much he's done. Like Brian Lohan said, he's still working with the physios and still doing whatever. And that's kind of the same message he's been giving out since January or that. So I don't know how close he is. If he's 85%, he'd be listed. I don't think he'd start. I wouldn't be that. I don't know. See, McInerney's kind of matched up pretty well against Gerard Hegarty in the past as well. So there's a bit of muscle memory comes into it there, potentially with Lohan as well. But I think it'll be largely the same team that started the other night, probably with O'Donnell and McInerney coming in from the start. Then you have Ian Galvin to come in. Like the bench the other night was fairly potent. Now, Aaron Shannon, who has seen very little game time in the league as well, looked very, very sharp too. Shane O'Morey's coming in. He's generally been playing quite a bit throughout the league as well, but they've gotten a hell of a lot out of the league, and I don't think they'll be losing the run themselves or anything with the other night, far from it, because they know exactly what's around the corner. It's very interesting to hear Shane O'Donnell say in his interview after that he would have sacrificed the league title 8 years ago for beating Waterford in the corresponding fixture when they met about 4 or 5 weeks later in the first round of the championship, and he kind of said something similar the other night that they'd give away the league to beat Limerick in the first round of Munster. I'm not sure if that's totally true, but yeah, like I don't know. Like you're on the back foot. Like what two counties have the worst start in Munster? Probably Clare and Limerick. So Limerick and Clare meet in the first game. If either of them lose, Limerick are playing Tip the following week, and Clare are going to Cork the following week. So, like, my God, like your Munster campaign could be in tatters after 7 days. It's mad. It's a crazy one. The ideal scenario for Clare and Limerick is probably a draw, and they've not lost any ground, shall we say, and they're not losing momentum going into the second game. But Darragh Donovan been out now injured as well for Limerick, and missing the first 2 games is a fair old loss for them, combined with Peter Casey been out. So, like, I don't know. I don't know if it can live up to the hype, because the hype is just crazy around that game in Cusack Park. But if it half lives up to the hype, we'll have a cracker.
Yeah, Catnap says Clare's main problem is mental, obsessive about baiting Limerick in Munster, and subsequently burnt out from the effort by the time they get out. River Power.
Jeez, that's a funny take now, in all fairness. Clare
to be fair now, the way they played in 2022, they were really off colour by the time they came out against Wexford. Now, maybe it was just totally physical after the Munster final that went to extra time, and then their performance against Kilkenny. And they definitely started slowly against Kilkenny last year also.
Yeah, to say they're obsessed with Limerick or Clare have had the best.
Well, they are obsessed. Of course they're obsessed with them.
Yeah, but to say that they're solely obsessed with them and beating them is the only thing that matters to them is ridiculous. They have the best round robin record of any team.
No, he didn't say that. He just said that their main problem is a mental one, and they're obsessive about baiting Limerick. And I don't think any of that's untrue.
So you think they're obsessive about baiting Limerick, to the detriment of the rest of their run in the rest of the championship?
Well, the point he adds on here is that they're subsequently burnt out from the effort. And I think with 2022, the way those matches played out against Wexford and Kilkenny...
Were they burnt out last year?
Well, the way they started, the quarterfinal against Dublin, obviously they weren't, but that could be somewhat to do with the way Dublin set up that day.
After Clare were beaten by Kilkenny in the All-Ireland semi-final last year, did you think Clare were burnt out coming into this game? Or did they show you evidence of being burnt out?
Do you know what? If we go back to that,
Just say it. I know you don't want to
no,
agree
because
with me,
I'm
but
not,
just say
I'm not
no.
looking to give you your gospel moment here where you can go, no, didn't I tell you? Like even against Dublin, remember that time that Paul Crummy turned one of the cornerbacks and he was rugby tackled and it should have been a penalty and it should have been a black card. That could have changed the game entirely. You know yourself, sometimes the butterfly effect can come into a game that a game turns into a hammering. But if something had to happen differently in a match, it may have gone a different course altogether. And then maybe we would be saying, well, there's 2 years in a row. Obviously, we don't have it, so it's it's all hypothetical. But there's definitely something in what Catnap is saying here.
Yeah,
and there's nothing wrong with being obsessed with beating Limerick. Everybody's obsessed with beating Limerick. That's why everyone's game is the way it is. Why everyone's learning to kind of press up higher on the pitch, go man to man at the back, and all that kind of stuff. Because everybody's thinking about beating Limerick.
I don't agree with the burnt out point. Anyway, I definitely don't.
What
agree
about 2022? Was there any element of it in 2022? Just say yes.
Been burnt out.
Just say yes.
I wouldn't have said they were burnt out. Conlon was missing obviously for the semi-final, but like if we're looking at
against Wexford,
they weren't good against Wexford. They still won the game, but like in the last 10 minutes, I wasn't thinking that Clare were burnt out of that game. They were the ones that were finishing stronger. Do you know what I mean? Usually, if you're burnt out, you wouldn't be the ones that are finishing stronger. But listen, you and Catnap can go for lunch together after.
Yeah, I think we've had a bit of a score draw here, haven't we? We certainly punched ourselves out. River Power's going in heavy on John Conlon. Conlon does his disappearing act in the centre, staying out in the wings, Inrocks leaving the centre open. I think he's just picking up a certain man, and whether they play centre or wing, he's moving with that player. But yeah, there were times when the centre was a little bit open. I thought John Donnelly was very clever with the way he set up the goal for Owen Cody, because Conlon had a shot from the left wing. I think Kilkenny had a puck out after conceding a score, and it was hit down on Conlon's wing. He won the ball, took a shot, went wide, and then straight away Murphy had a puck out onto the far wing, which was straight to Donnelly, who had obviously raced all the way across, and then a lovely stick pass over the top for Owen Cody to score. Do you believe in the whole? Sorry, actually, I have to come back to the Kelly point. I really wanted to take you up on that. You reckon he probably won't start because he needs a run of games, he needs sharpness, all that kind of stuff. Tony Kelly's best ever games probably are against Limerick, and he always so he's a player that Limerick don't necessarily put a man marker on. Sorry, don't at all. So if there's one game where he's going to be able to come in and like he's even if he hasn't played that much, if they feel he's fit enough and the the physios etc say he's fine, he's going to be able to find the space because his head will find the space, and he's still going to be a quick player, and he's still going to be able to puck it over the bar. So what sharpness are we worried about here? I know what you're saying to some degree, but the other thing is he knows how to play against Limerick insofar as anyone knows how to play against them, and they're generally a team that he does well against.
Yeah, no, they generally are. Anytime he's done well against them, he's been coming with a run of games into it though as well. You know yourself, you've been in games where you haven't played in a while and you're just not on it. And I think, like, as good as Tony Kelly is, I do think he's human in that regard. I honestly don't think he can do a Shane O'Donnell on it. I think it's about a handful of players in the country that could do something like that. And I think, I think he'd be, if he's fit, he'd be listed in the 26. Like you were asking me, the previous question was who will be dropped or who will he come in for? Who will he come in for? Where will he come in for? Is another interesting part of it as well. If you do think he will come in, I don't think he'd start against Limerick personally, but that's just my own opinion at the minute, because I think, I think if he's 80 to 85%, which I think he's more likely to be that than to be up anywhere near the 100, him coming in when the game has loosened out a bit, shall we say, and he could maybe win a free or something like that, or get on a ball or something like that. I think that's far more likely, rather than just imagine if he did start and he was totally off it and not up to the pace and even had to be removed or something like that. How big of a thing mentally that would be for Clare. I think we would have probably seen him the other night, or he would have been listed if he was fit to come in. Okay,
well look, I'm going to come to in a second the Adrian Mullen hit on Cathal Malone, but I just want to read out a few comments first because they're absolutely flying in. Adrian McGrath says, no, Michael, Lawler completely changed after 5 minutes of being on O'Donnell. He dominated the first half and was really jittery after that. The kick out over the sideline was amazing. I do remember that, when he was running back to his own goals, and rather than trying to lift it, I'd say there's that fear of O'Donnell's pace and him coming in
Yeah.
flicking it, and then you're running back towards your own goal. So in some ways, I kind of understand it.
Yeah, no, he might have been jittery in that instance. I actually thought, given like if you could see the yardage that was there in front of the two of them, and you do not want to be in that, I actually thought he coped quite well, to be honest with you. And I think that's the beauty of having Hugh Lawler, is that you can leave him in that kind of space with the likes of Galan or the likes of O'Donnell, and he'll still hold his own, because most defenders are only going to win 1, 2, maybe 3 if they're lucky out of 10 balls to go in that type of situation.
Okay, so coming back then to Adrian Mullen's hit on Cavan Malone, and with the hit also Malone went flying into John Donnelly behind it, which might have made it look that bit worse. For you, no free, yellow card, red card, or free?
Well, when I looked at it initially, I thought, because I thought it looked like
You
Malone's
went
head.
full Gary Neville there, by the way. Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
It looked that I thought that's what it looked like, and it took me to look back at it probably 3 or 4 times to kind of realize what actually happened. The shoulder was right on the money. Malone was down a small bit, and as you say, his head did move, and then it kind of collided into Donnelly, and it made it look like a hell of a lot worse than it actually was. Like, I don't have I'm unfortunately, Johnny Murphy doesn't have the benefit of looking back 3 or 4 times and seeing what type of an incident it was. I thought it was interesting though. I thought he intimated that it was shoulder to shoulder in kind of his body language and what he was saying. And then I think the sideline official, who I think, or the linesman, I think was Shane Hines, he had a word with him, and then it went from being I'd say play away lads to a free and a yellow card. Like, if I got to look back at it several times, I would have said it wasn't a free and it wasn't a yellow card, obviously. But as I said, it's a difficult one for a referee to deal with in normal time, because it didn't look hectic. I'll put it to you that way. And then you get a good look at it and you see, okay, Mullen's shoulder he didn't raise his elbow, or he didn't raise his shoulder going into it. He just went for the shoulder hit. Now, the gas thing about it is that he was on a yellow, and that had the consequence of tying down Mullen a small bit thereafter, but he got away with what looked like a body slam, and I think it was David McInerney in the second half. That was miles worse.
Yeah, he did, and that stood out to me as well. And actually, just the trend of the amount of yellow cards that Kilkenny got compared with Clare. Clare obviously got that black card late on, and maybe it would have been a yellow if it wasn't a black card. Anyway, you could argue that point. But Mullen, Tommy Walsh, Billy Ryan, actually Timmy Clifford, Kevin Blanchfield, yeah, it was 5 yellow cards to them before Clare ever got that black card. So does that point to maybe a bit of leniency towards Clare, or the fact that maybe Kilkenny were a little bit looser throughout the whole game? And looseness can also be interpreted as they were just incredibly physical, and you need to do that when you're up against a team as talented as Clare.
I don't. There's nothing jumping out to coming to mind of when Clare deserved a yellow card or anything like that before that. Yeah. I have to say, to be honest with you, so they were. And it's probably been thrown at them, and even in the Tipperary game, that they gave away a lot of soft frees, and they maybe pick up a few cards here and there, but didn't see much the other night. Yeah, the one for Rodgers was a yellow, I would have said, and definitely not a black, and that would have been their sole kind of yellow card, really. Kilkenny were a bit looser, and Johnny Murphy pulled, like, the Kevin Blanchfield one was, I think it was just for kind of a loose pull under a high ball, I think.
That was on top of the head of, let me see, who was that on top of? On top of Darragh Lohan.
Yeah. So, like, a good few of the Kilkenny yellow cards, Mullen aside, were probably well deserved, to be honest with you. Like, Timmy Clifford kind of got very excited, I would say, and he was in around Adam Hogan's vicinity a couple of times, and he tends to get people excited as well.
I would say, when I looked at that Mullen one the first time, I was like, beautiful hit. Watching the replay then, and I was like, lovely hit. And then I did notice that it was helmet on helmet, but not intentionally.
Yeah.
But if you run into, so you're Cathal Malone, and he's rightly trying to burst out, because that's what players do. That's what everyone's programmed to do. Obviously, players are recycling the ball a little bit more, move it and switch it around to the far side. But if you can burst through, you do. But you're going in knowing that contact is coming, looking for contact in a way. So when you get it, like, sometimes incidentally, you will see helmets hit helmets. So I don't think that Mullen is going out to put himself in danger, hit his helmet off Malone. He's going in for that square shoulder on tackle, and I just think it's hurled away. I don't think it's a free. I don't think it's anything.
Yeah, it's funny. It was the force of the hit, like shook him in the head, like or very close to being helmet on helmet. But I definitely see how the optics of it resulted in it being a yellow, because it kind of I thought it looked bad initially, and then I was kind of like, ooh, and then you look back at it and you're like, no, that's perfectly on the money. But that's kind of where we are at the minute. And listen, I have as much of a concern and a worry for head high hits as anybody, and it's probably a drum we've been beating for the last year or so in particular. And I think a head on or a head tackle like that, not like the one the other day, but some of the ones we've seen, should probably be a red card to try and stamp that out, because it's becoming a bit of a blight in the game. But that wasn't it the other night. Definitely not. And there was a comment put in there about Owen Murphy's tackle on Aid McCarthy for his goal. Like, Aid McCarthy carried the ball nearly in on top of Murphy. Some are suggesting that he led with a knee or whatever. Like, if Owen Murphy didn't apply physical contact there, I'd be giving out to him. Do you know what I mean? Like, you don't just let him
leave
forward.
with your studs. No, I actually never analysed this particular action, so I don't know. I'm just saying in general, because I remember it happened to Con O'Callaghan in the county final a few years ago, and it happened to Mark Howard playing for Kilmacud Crokes against Ballyboden. When you lead with the studs as a goalkeeper when someone's coming in on you, I think that's a real problem.
I didn't think he led with the studs now, I have to say.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about this incident. Just
yeah. Oh no, that type of incident is like, that's a potential career ender, I would say. So, but it was more like, if Owen Murphy if there hadn't been a bit of contact for that McCarthy goal, I'd be nearly giving out to him. Like, do you know what I mean? So lads aren't just allowed to just ghost in and walk in without getting contact. And Aid McCarthy seemed fine after 10 or 15 seconds there. He knew there was a bell coming, and he took it, in fairness to him.
The Don says, who do you think starts ahead of Dara O'Donovan? Will it be David Reedy? O'Donovan is a huge loss, good on the ball. Oh, I think he's a player that makes him tick, always gets his tackle count going, seems to be like they all seem like very good organisers at this stage, because they're on the road a long time. But in terms of who starts, well, obviously William O'Donoghue will be midfield. Barry Murphy's had some really good league games, maybe not so much the last day out against Kilkenny. Well, he's probably in the mix. David Reedy is definitely a trusted lieutenant. The other thing is Keane Lynch was put out midfield there the last day, and he didn't have his greatest game. So, do you know what? It actually is an area of concern for John Kiley leading into this next match.
I have a theory. I was thinking about this, and
it's the Cathal O'Neill theory, isn't it?
It's Cathal O'Neill at 7, Keane Lynch at midfield, Kyle Hayes at centre forward. That's what I think might happen. Maybe that's why Lynch played midfield in that league final, and maybe they kind of knew what the O'Donovan. I'm sure they had a fair idea what the O'Donovan injury was and how long he was going to be out for at the time as well. So maybe that's something we'll see. Hayes has played up in the forward line off very little build up before. Did he start in the forward line against Cork? I think in the full forward line in the 2022 championship, having not played there in a couple of years, I think. So that's something we could probably see.
I disagree, actually, and I'd love if people got their comments in here. I think Cathal O'Neill might go to centre forward, and I think he might go to midfield even. I think Kyle Hayes, put him back to where he's devastating, and he's already played this year against Dublin. Put him in the half back line. And the reason I say Keane Lynch to centre forward is I thought he had more of he doesn't look 100% right at the moment. If he's 100% right, you can play him anywhere and he'll be the best player in the country. But he didn't look 100% certainly against Kilkenny at midfield, where you're covering so much ground. But he looked a bit better the week before against Limerick, where he was coming short from centre forward and he was able to pop ball and link play and stuff like that. And I think at the moment, if you're playing midfield, oftentimes when you get the ball, you're facing forward. And he just doesn't look to be moving his normal way. Whereas a lot of time you get at centre forward, facing away from play, linking up with people coming through. So I think if Cathal O'Neill is coming onto the ball, if Will O'Donoghue, if all the other flying players from their backline are coming onto the ball, I think that might work a little bit better for him. But people get your comments in.
I just wonder, with Casey been out as well, that's obviously taken away from the forward line. Will they feel they need something else up there? Maybe.
Have you heard rumours about him English maybe having an injury? Shane O'Brien went off for the under-20s the other night as well.
Hadn't heard anything about Adam English. I know that Dan Morrissey was carrying a hamstring, I think, but I think he's going to be okay. I think outside of O'Donovan and the Casey suspension, I think they're okay outside of that. Donnacha O'Donnell could obviously start inside as well.
Graham Mulcahy.
Graham Mulcahy, yeah, they go back to. Are they more likely to go back to the tried and tested? I would probably think they are, to be honest with you. But like, it's so fascinating from a Limerick point of view. So Donovan's gone for the first 2 games, and Casey's missing the first day. You know, a knock or two, or lads not been playing up to the levels that they have been the last couple of years, and they're on the back foot as they were last year as well. And we remember that how much of a thrill that roller coaster ride was last year through Munster. I'd be expecting something similar this year. If they get out of Munster intact, they're in a great spot. But it's not a foregone conclusion. If I was putting my life on it, you would back them to get out. But still plenty of things that you could see happening along the way that could be going to be plenty of forks in the road anyway, and plenty of roadblocks in their way.
If Limerick don't do the drive for 5 this year, I think it's because they won't get out of Munster. So if they get out of Munster, like, because you're talking about those injury issues, if it's going to come home to roost, it's through having to play 4 to 5 bruising games against teams who will take you all the way. They'll all kind of drag you underwater for 70 plus minutes. Whereas you're starting to get your break a little bit after that, especially if you win the provincial title, you get a little bit more room to breathe, and you'll have some of those players back. And if it's some of those players are a little bit rusty at the moment, you know, Hannon obviously needs a few more games. Lynch maybe needs more games or a rest or whatever it is. He needs a little something. If they're still alive 2 months from now or a little bit after that, then I think they're going to be fine. So that's why I'm thinking Munster's, where if they're going to be caught, it's going to be there.
Yeah, and sure, like, look at the record in Croke Park since 2018 as well. Like, they just seem to love that. You know, it's not, mathematically, it's not that much bigger than a lot of fields that they play on, but they just seem to thrive in around there. I'd be something similar, to be honest with you, and that's what's going to make Munster so interesting. You could have a team that finishes 4th or 5th in Munster that could be the one to take out the big fish, or, you know, at least puncture a couple of holes in them along the way, like Waterford nearly did last year. Do you know what I mean? Despite finishing 5th, they were the ones that they had probably Limerick back on the ropes, maybe going into a couple of games thereafter. It's just going to be fascinating. And it just, I actually, it's something that you just can't wait for, and I just hope it lives up to the hype. I'm sure it will.
Yeah, do you know, actually, can we just go back a second to the first goal that Clare got? Because, as I said, Kilkenny had so many chances in the first half, didn't make good on them, 39% score in return. And then the goal that Mark Rogers set up, again, it was a long puck out that Kilkenny failed to deal with. So at least a couple of the goals came from that area, and that's something that obviously they'll be focusing in on. But when Mark Rogers got the ball, he had Aidan McCarthy obviously ahead of him, who he hand passed the ball to, and I think it was Reedy or Ian Galvin to his left. But there was a couple of defenders, and I wondered, did Tommy Walsh, you know, when obviously in that situation, your man will peel away a little bit and you're unsure, should I hold the centre a little bit or should I go to my man? If I go to my man, basically Rogers might be able to solo straight through and score. So Rogers' options were, I try a tricky hand pass over the top with my right hand into Galvin or Reedy, whichever it was, but there's also a defender in the way. I go myself, but I have a man on my shoulder, or I pop it out to Aidan McCarthy. I felt that Tommy Walsh probably stayed too close to goal and gave McCarthy too much wiggle room or too much latitude. And then when he went across, I thought he was probably a little bit kind of slow to get across. Not in terms of speed, because obviously he's a quick player, but I felt he waited too long. And when you have to hedge your bets in those situations, I think he might have got that slightly wrong. Now, that can happen to anyone, but I'm just saying in that particular situation, it compounded the fact that Kilkenny had been so wasteful in front of goals before.
It's a delicate game of chicken, isn't it? You even, isn't it? No, you just want him.
Two cars drive for each other.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, but you want him to come to you, and make contact, but you also want him to even have to look up or take his eyes off or think about something. That's the one thing what you mentioned there, you definitely don't let him come through the centre anyway and just walk through. You make him make a decision, or at least if he has to make a pass, then he has to execute the pass properly. There's more of a chance of a mistake there. You're trying to even step to make him force the pass even a little bit earlier. You're just trying to do anything just to knock his kind of rhythm off there, or make him look up, or something like that. It's funny, if you see a player, often when there was a defender in that type of situation, if someone's soloing through with their head down, you'd nearly charge, because they're not looking, they're not aware of what's going on in the situation. Someone's very comfortable and they're soloing and they're seeing what's going on. It kind of puts you in an area of doubt as well. I thought Walsh maybe turned his back a small bit to the shot as well, and I only thought, looking back on the replay, that there could have been even more pressure on the shot, maybe, and it would have helped Dawn Murphy as well in that scenario too.
Anything else that we haven't covered from the match that you want to touch on at all?
No, I don't think so. I think there's a fair bit covered. From a Kilkenny point of view, they will take plenty of heart from getting back into the game when it looked like it was going to go away from them. A lot of that was to do with John Donnelly, I would say, and even how he just linked the play together. He was the one that set up Cody for the goal. He was the one that forced the penalty, albeit it wasn't a penalty. And even that lovely little line ball that he played and got the return back and had the ball back over the bar. I thought he was the one that was kind of forcing the issue for them a small bit. Him and I would say Shane Murphy has been, one of their players of the league, and definitely one of the emerging players, and someone who's definitely in pole position, I would say, to wear a championship jersey for Kilkenny. And that would have been a bit left field, I'd say, if you'd said that maybe before the league started.
Yeah, Joe, I was watching some of the under-20 action the other night, and again, I have to say that Cork really did batter Waterford. Waterford looked a fair bit off in that game, I have to say. Limerick, then, they came up a couple of points short against Clare. So the leading scorers, I think, for Limerick in that game, Oisin O'Farrell, he scored 1-7. Robert O'Farrell scored 1-1. Con Hayes scored 3. In terms of the Clare team, I just trying to get it up here in terms of just figuring out who did a lot of the scoring for them. I can't quite find it off the top of my just as I'm looking for it here quickly. But Waterford do seem to be a little bit off the pace. Then also I was watching the Munster there on Thursday night. Tipperary beat Cork 119 to 212. That was very tight finish. Tipperary were 8 points up and made hard work of it for a finish. Clare beat Waterford 22 points to 13. But not sure if you saw any of that. But anyway, it's good to see the Munster Championship get going, because we were talking about what was going on in Leinster the week before.
Yeah, no, I didn't see, apart outside of the results, I didn't see much of that. Saw a bit of the 20s at the weekend. I was kind of busy on Saturday, so I didn't see as much as I would have liked, but Offaly definitely had themselves in a winning position against Galway on Saturday in O'Connor Park, and probably relinquished it, to be honest with you. Galway were down to 14. Offaly had a penalty. I think they were up by maybe 2 or 3 at the time. Dan Ravenhill hit the penalty wide, I think, and Galway hit the last couple to get a draw. And it was kind of a bit, probably wasn't that dissimilar to the week before, where Offaly were the ones maybe that kind of just poked their heads in front at the end when it looked like the game was gone away from them. Galway probably looked like the game was gone away from them at the weekend as well, and they were the ones that got the draw. But I would say honours even, but we were probably the better team on the balance of the play I saw anyway.
Yeah, just back to that Clare victory over Limerick in the under-20s. Conor Whelan scored 7 frees in that game. Michael Collins, who was centre forward, I think, on the All-Ireland winning minor team last year, he scored 2-1. Sean Rinn scored 3 from centre forward. Thought Jack O'Neill, who we would have seen for Arts Gullery, he was very good as well. So keep getting your comments in on that. We might move on to the football now. Wasn't it quite interesting to see 2 lads who had both been vying for the Cavan number 1 jersey in recent years, both managed over the weekend? Alan O'Mara was with New York, obviously didn't go brilliantly for them against Mayo, and Raymond Galligan getting a brilliant win for our Cavan against Monaghan.
Yeah, sure, it was mad. It was all about goalkeepers at the weekend, with Rory Beggan even starting that game, which I thought he might, and he actually kicked the score to put them ahead mid to late stages of the second half, and then obviously Cavan got the 2 goals. Yeah, it's a big win for Ray Galligan, and it's been a big season so far for him. I know they didn't get promoted to Division 1, but they had a really good Division 2 campaign, really, really solid. Especially considering Cavan have kind of gone up and down divisions, even during the height of Mickey Graham's time, where they relegated to Division 3 the year that they won Ulster. Do you know what I mean? And they went all the way down to Division 4 at one stage in the last 4 or 5 years. So that was a huge win. Just even chatting to a couple of Monaghan people that were at the game, kind of just wondering whether mileage on the clock for maybe some of the older Monaghan players is kind of coming home to roost eventually. But I don't know. I think you'd be foolish enough to say that, given what they've done in the in the not too recent past, and particularly last year's run to the All Ireland semi final. But that's 7 losses in a row, I think, for Monaghan. But it shouldn't take away a massive win for Cavan and Ray Galligan.
Yeah, luckily Darren Hughes' injury, which stopped play for a nice while, apparently it's not as bad as initially feared. So that's, a huge relief, because what a brilliant servant he's been, and you would hate to see it finish up like that for him. But there was no goals into up around the hour mark. Then Pádraig Faulkner hits in an absolute beauty. Then Miall Hamill, who should have had a penalty maybe a few minutes earlier, and that could have put them 4 points ahead. He finished a nice little bit of a jink and finish. Then really good goal from Jared Smith, quick 1-2, and buried it past Rory Beggan, who we might come to shortly. And then, I don't know, did you watch Man United against Liverpool or watch the game back or whatever?
No.
But at one stage, the centre-back, Gerald Kwanzaa, he tried to do a pass back across the back four, across the defence, and it was intercepted by Bruno Fernandes, who was just around the tip of the centre circle, and he just hit it first time, just cut through the ball back of the net. And I was thinking of that when I saw, later on when I saw that, I was thinking of the finish from Paddy Lynch, where there was a quick free taken by Cavan at the end of the game. Now, a Monaghan player had tried to look for, sticking the arm in and holding the defender's arm, trying to induce a free. But the referee kind of copped onto it, and he gave a free the other way. Quick free over the top. Lynch caught it. Goalkeeper was out, and he hit it into an empty net. Very similar to that one that Damien Comer scored against Derry a couple of years ago. But I just thought it was very Bruno Fernandes-esque. But a very exciting game towards the end, because you would have thought Monaghan point ahead late on. They're going to see this one out against a team that's been operating largely at a lower level the last couple of years in the league anyway. So, and also going into the Tailteann Cup. So brilliant win for Cavan.
Yeah, I was listening to tuned into a bit of that game, and I got it just after Beggan put them, I think, a point up with a great score from play, and you're kind of thinking, okay, I would have thought the way Cavan are going to win this game is probably pace setting from the start and front running somewhat, and maybe Monaghan will come with a bit of a drive. But once Monaghan were in that position, I was thinking they're going to be hard peg back here. There's so much know-how in this scenario. So, to me, you'd weight the Cavan win even higher as a result of that, to beat the real experienced team coming down the home straight when you're maybe not in a winning position. That was a big win for them.
Yeah, I was watching Mayo in New York last night, 221 to 2-6. It was just, from the get-go, it was one-way traffic. Ryan O'Donoghue had scored 13 for a finish. 9 of those were frees. Cillian O'Connor came on and scored 1-1, including a penalty. At the other end, to be fair, New York never stopped. Frank O'Reilly, he got himself a goal, so did Jamie Boyle. But it was just all too easy. And people say, it's great to spread the game. And there was a big crowd in Gaelic Park. How much does it realistically do for the game, having these... and I know they beat Leitrim last year, but when you see a team like Mayo drawing against New York, how much is that doing for the game? Is the juice worth the squeeze, is what I'm asking?
I think a lot of it is funded by Connacht GA by all accounts, isn't it? I think Connacht GA fund a fair whack at that trip. And realistically, I said it to you on Thursday's show, from over, the way it rotates, and realistically, and with due respect to them, when Sligo or Leitrim go there, it's probably far more likely to be, a tight game. There's always the potential for an upset, as there was last year. But when the big hitters go, and in particular, Mayo and Galway, very, very unlikely, as we saw with Galway going over to Ruislip on Saturday and putting up, was a 5-18, and picking up more injuries to add to that crazy list they have at the minute. But when they go there, and even Roscommon, obviously to a bit of a lesser extent, you just know that the chances of an upset are greatly, greatly decreased. So I don't know. I'd love to know the breakdown of it. I'd love to know logistically and financially what's costing to the travelling county to go out. I don't know. Is it all worthwhile for a moment like we had this time last year? I don't know. But as regards spreading the game or growing the game, I think that's an easy kind of thing to say. But I don't know if there's anything tangible in it. Really, does it actually grow the game, or have we any numbers to base that on? I wouldn't think so.
Yeah, I wouldn't be totally sure myself. Get your comments in and let us know if you think it does, because we're always open to those comments. Sligo beat Leitrim. That was 15 points to 6. Andy Moran was saying afterwards, can they play at a higher standard? Absolutely, but as I said, they're the standard bearer for us. They're a small county who are absolutely maximising what they've got. That's huge, and I think Leitrim can take a lot from Sligo. Galway, they fairly battered London. That was 5-21 to 9 points. And again, how much are we getting out of a game like this? And again, if they're drawing against the right teams, yes, it can end up with tight games, but it comes back to the whole structure of the championship. Why is it set up so behemoths can end up taking on relative minnows or whatever? We need championships whereby teams at similar levels are playing each other and not have to go through the provincial championships before we get to that. But Galway, they're chasing provincial 3 in a row. Johnny Heaney and Tom O'Callaghan, they had to go off with injury concerns. So it's getting even tougher for Pádraig Joyce.
Yeah, I think Joyce kind of said something along the lines of that he'd be hoping in 10 days' time that he mightn't be in a bad spot and might have, a couple of his marquee men back. But it's interesting listening to Leach in talking last week. He was at the Leinster launch and he just said that he probably thinks he would have been okay to start against Cork in the last round of the league, but that it's and I wonder what's the protocol in other counties. They basically have a protocol within Wexford at the minute that you have to have done 2 full pitch sessions before you can play a game. I wonder with certain players, is that a little bit different at different times of the year? When you have that type of protocol in place, you can kind of handcuff yourself to it as well. So it's kind of it's a tricky enough one. I don't know if this season, I doubt Pádraig Joyce is going to be able to follow that protocol anyway at different stages of the year.
And that's where Brian Lohan may be able to follow his a little bit more because he probably has more of his panel available.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like outside of Kelly and Ryan Taylor, who's maybe a bit more long term, and they'll be looking at him maybe being back if they're in the All Ireland stages, I would say, or latter stages of Munster or Munster final. But he's largely has pretty much a full deck to pick from.
Pádraig Ryan, actually, this is talk about the Monaghan Cavan game. Beggan is a legend, but how many empty net goals have Monaghan conceded now? It's nearly expected nowadays. That's kind of an interesting point. But like, is that the price you pay, the risk you take, because you know that he can do damage up the other end, like that gorgeous point he scored late on to level it or put them ahead, whichever it was. So are you just accepting the fact that you can concede a goal if someone else makes a mistake? Like,
yeah,
that's not Beggan. Like, Beggan didn't make him. Someone else made a mistake or give away a free.
Yeah, it's all about whether you think the juice is worth the squeeze. They were obviously chasing the game at the time as well a bit. So you kind of have to kind of force things to happen as well. Would the Monaghan faithful have been happy if everyone was just kind of sitting back and they weren't kind of try to probe or press? And again, it wasn't his fault, but I suppose had he not been playing in that more advanced position or trying to get into that type of position, there would have been someone standing the goals, and likely there wouldn't have been a goal or whatever. But that's the tactic that they are employing, and you have to realise when you play that way, same as Derry or whoever it is, Kerry to a lesser extent, when you play that way, there's a fair possibility that could happen, and it did happen yesterday.
She might as well lose by 6-3, and that's what happened. Like,
I would definitely be of that opinion anyway. No, absolutely no issue whatsoever. Because at the end of the day, like, if you don't give yourself a chance to get that leveler or put a ball in around the box, you might have to overcommit. But I'd rather overcommit and give yourself a chance than to not give yourself a chance at all and just be one score away, but not really put yourself into the mixer. Like, I'm a big believer in just getting the ball in there. At that last couple of minutes of a game, you just have to try and force that bit of pressure, force somebody to do something, force their skills to be perfect or under intense pressure and more bodies in around there. Do you know what I mean? Because people start thinking at those stages of a game, how should we say, the size of it all, the size of the win, how much this would mean, and then all of a sudden, oh, Rory Beggin's in on top of me, and then you're like thinking about something else, and you're just trying to force something to happen. And the other side of that comes with trying to force that pressure. You leave yourself more open at the back, as Monaghan did, and as other teams have.
Yeah, in Munster then, Cork beat Limerick 3-13 to 11 points in the football championship, of course. And the other game, I'm not sure what happened in the other game.
Bit of history in that one. I was actually chatting Paul Shanky just a few minutes before we started, just for a piece in the paper tomorrow, and it was just great to I think he was the last appointed football manager this year. Him and Paul Kelly actually were the two managers last appointed, and they both faced off in the first round. Neither probably the most appetizing job, and definitely, like Shanky was saying, like literally, I was saying, like, what's the size of your backroom team? And he's like, he named out like himself, the coach, a selector, the physio, S&C, and that was like it. Shin A. He said there's a lot of people double jobbing and doing different tasks, and they have a couple extra people come in maybe on match day, but it's a
what
massive.
What about stats? Because remember, you only want one person for stats. How many do you have for that?
I doubt he had too many by the sounds of things. I didn't ask him about that now, but I doubt he had too many by the sounds of things. But it was it was the perfect draw for them. They drawn with them in the league as well. The most realistic match, probably one of the most realistic matches that they could win across playing teams in any province this year. And it didn't look likely maybe a half time when they hadn't taken advantage of that gale force breeze that was behind them. But it's before talking about, how bad it is for Tip and how much they've fallen, it's a fair win for Waterford, given they were down 10 or 11 from last year. I said it's not the most appetizing managerial job. It's probably not the most appetizing for players to go into squads wise. It's not exactly high profile. There's very little profile in it, and I would say that I know for a fact that they enjoyed their 10 or 15 minutes on the pitch after, and they enjoyed the time in the dressing room with a few instruments and that run around and music playing, and they enjoyed their night in Dungarvan, and rightfully so. And they're in a situation now where they're 70 minutes away from playing in the All-Ireland group stages, which is that's maybe a debate for another day, but they're taking advantage of the situation that's in front of them, and it was a huge win for them.
Yeah, Tip's first loss to Waterford in 36 years in the championship, obviously. Tom O'Connell scoring 2-3. Stephen Curry, or should we call him Steph Curry?
Yeah.
With 0-3. I'm sure he gets called that anyway. Jason Curry also with a point for Tipperary. Mark Stokes with a goal. Stephen Grogan, Rian Quigley, Peter McGarry, Teddy Doyle, Connor Sweeney, all with a point each. But look, Tip have had a lot of injury issues, but still in all, it's just the amount of players that are missing or that have scarpered for one reason or another. Obviously, some injuries, some lads have left the panel, others have retired, and it's just Paul Kelly has a big job ahead of him, and it's a thankless task as well, because anytime he develops a player, or they might start going well, like Conor Bowe a couple of years ago, he spends a year in footballers and then he's off with the hurlers, and he might develop somebody, let's say Peter McGarry, for example. I don't know if he's in Liam Cahill's plans, but he might spend a year here, do well, build himself up physically, and then he gets whipped by the hurlers.
Yeah, they've obviously had a massive turnover of bodies, but they would still see themselves as, probably better than Waterford. But the last couple of times they've played, there was a one score game the last year twice, and then obviously they were beaten here the other day. It's 2020, that November day, was it November 20, seems like a hell of a long time away. And when you look at the faces that are no longer around the place, it's all change, and it's going to be more difficult to get the buy-in going forward now as well. Because at least if you get a win there and you're in a semi-final and you have potentially, even just the potential of the carrot of playing in the All-Ireland stages or coming up against a big hitter, and Clare would obviously be a good bit ahead of them, as they would be with Waterford. But they would, a couple of years ago, they would be fancying their chances maybe of beating Clare, or at least been very competitive with them. Whereas now, it makes it a far more difficult sell, I'll put it to you that way. And how they bounce back now in the Tailteann Cup will be interesting too, because they're at one of the lowest ebbs they've been at for quite some time this morning.
Yeah, and just in the meanwhile there, I've been corrected by Adrian McGrath. I said that Jack O'Neill is in Ardscoil Reach. That's Mark O'Neill, who's another good forward. Jack O'Neill, he says, is in Rice College. And it brings me back to a point that Clare are bringing through players. They really are. This run that they're having at the moment, even if they don't get over the line in the next year or two, they're still not going to be far away. And I know I've said that the time is now for them. It is the time. The time is now because Brian Lohan's in year 5, and some of the other players, some of the key players from 2013 that are still around, they need to get it done now. But I don't think Clare will be going anywhere.
No, those players at the latter stages of their career, obviously, the time is of essence for them. But Clare's conveyor belt is as healthy as any team in the country, probably. I'm kind of looking at the team that Lohan built throughout the league as well, and you're kind of thinking a lot of inter-county managers build for the here and now. Like, I wouldn't say Brian Lohan's going anywhere for a long time, to be honest with you. Whatever about me and you questioning whether they need, as an outsider, questioning whether they need a trophy or they need something to show for all the progress that they've made. Like, he's absolutely revered in Clare, and it's not just for the performances of the senior team, it's for all of the work behind the scenes, even as regards, like, by all accounts, I believe he's like central in a lot of what is going on in Club Clare, central in a lot of what is going on with development squads and systems that have been set up to make Clare fairly, impenetrable. Because a couple of years ago, like, we were only talking about that the minor loss, that 40-point beat to Cork, and it looks like things have turned completely on their head. You just see strength and conditioning things popping up every now and then on Clare's socials, and you're just kind of thinking, yeah, I don't think any of this was going on a couple of years ago. And you now have, lads that are 14 and 15 that are going to be coming up through the ranks, that they're doing everything that they're supposed to be doing. And that's why Lohan is so well loved in Clare, because he's not just managing the senior team. It seems like, in some sense, he's managing a lot of what is going on in the county. And there's some buy-in, and O'Donnell said it in his interview after, the connection between the supporters and the team has probably never been bigger than it is now. And that's, like, you can't buy that. That's just there's a goodwill going around. Now there's a trophy, and they'll believe there's more trophies to come as well. There's an All-Ireland minor from last year. Like, it looks like the good times are going to roll for a while in Clare.
Actually, do you know something else that stood out from the Kilkenny-Clare game? Three brothers on the pitch for Kilkenny at the end, the three Blanchfields.
Yeah, mad enough, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and we saw that. We've seen that for, let's say, outside of Tipperary with the three McGrath brothers. Has it happened that much where we've had three brothers on the pitch together in recent years?
In recent years, you obviously have the 5 O'Kelly Lynches for Sligo, but at top tier hurling, Janie, there's not too many. Like, I can't think, like, outside of, like, you always go back to the Bonners, the Dooleys, the Wheelatons. Like, outside of them,
Cahalan's doing it, but it'll probably have to happen in the next year or so if Jack got a call up. I'm not sure how close or far away he is.
True, you have there's triplets. There's triplets playing together for the Clare Camogie team, and they have a fourth sister as well involved too. The Dooleys, obviously. Yabba Dabba Dooley. How did I forget that? But no, like, it's a fair achievement now in modern times, in particular, when, fair to say, like, back in the day in the 90s and that, there were a lot less distractions, shall we say, where there's a lot more distractions now. So to get 3 sets of brothers through is a phenomenal achievement. Yeah,
the Coonies with Galway, Cavan and Joseph, they're brothers, aren't they?
Yeah, Kevin and Joseph and Shane and Connor are brothers, obviously not related to the others, to the best of my knowledge.
Yeah. Okay, some of the results in the Leinster Football Championship. A shock for Westmeath, losing 2-9 to 1-11 to Wicklow. So that's absolutely fantastic for the Garden County there. The scoring was done by John Paul Nolan, 1-2. Dean Healy, 1-2. Christopher O'Brien, he scored 3, and Kevin Quinn, 2. For Westmeath, Luke Loughlin hit 5, 3 of those were frees. Jonathan Lynham got a goal. John Heslin with 2. Same with Robbie Ford, Ronan O'Toole and Sam McCartan, 1 each. That's a bit of a shocker for Westmeath, isn't it? And irrespective of what team they're putting out, good, bad or indifferent, you just don't expect them to lose to Wicklow.
No, you don't. And they beat them by 6 points in the league. And Wicklow's only win in the league was a 9.8 win over Limerick in round 6. Westmeath won Division 3, and you're thinking, potentially they could back up maybe if they get to that stage, which is obviously in jeopardy now, I assume. If they get back to the All-Ireland stage, that it could be very, very competitive again. It just goes to show you, like, and this would be, I'm sure, a little minor worry in Brian Lohan's mind. Like, things can change so quickly in a week. You have or 8 days or whatever it was for Westmeath. You have a trophy in Crow Park celebrating, and they were keeping their feet in the ground, I'm sure. But Oisin McConville was after producing like one of the great ambushes here, and like they hit the ground running from the start. They put them on the back foot from the start, and Westmeath were what a Westmeath on the board at half time. A point, I think. I think it was 1-5 to a point at half time.
Yeah.
They had them chasing their tails from the very start, and try as they might, and they got close. They couldn't reel them in. Like this is a huge win. It's funny. I was doing a piece for the program on this game, and I just said like things weren't going that particularly well for Wicklow. But if you throw back to 2018, they were, mathematically the 32nd of 32 counties after finishing bottom of Division 4, and they beat Offaly. And now here things aren't going particularly well. They're relegated to Division 4. Westmeath are going to Division 2. Like there's 2 divisions between them next year, and they still produce this performance. Like one of the great Wicklow wins. And I know like it's Wicklow was against the grain, and Waterford was against the grain. The provincial systems, obviously, championship are not perfect. We know that, but there's still the odd opportunity that something like this will be thrown up. And it was mad that 2 were thrown up into one day.
Yeah, probably not great for Westmeath that they only had a week after the league final. So that meant they were out 4 weeks in a row. Also, in terms of starting team, Ray Kennellan wasn't able to start, and didn't play at all. Neither did captain Kevin Maguire. James Dolan and John Heslin were only able to come off the bench. So if you were to probably put together a number of factors that Desi Dolan would not want heading into this game, those would probably be it. But just before you jump in on that, we've actually messed up a little bit on the Coonies. There's 3 of them with Galway. John Cooney as well. We've messed up.
I forgot about Big John. He played throughout the Walsh Cup this year as well. Actually, it is hard to keep track of them all at different stages. But Kevin's going to be... I don't see the 3 of them been on the... don't know if the 3 of them have been on the field of play yet for Galway in a competitive game, because Joseph wasn't back this year, and Kevin and John both played in the Walsh Cup final, but then Kevin got injured that day. So the likelihood of the 3 of them featuring on the pitch together this year, I would say, is pretty slim. Someone mentioned the Fenleys, obviously it was just two of them as well. But the Murphys...
Well, the previous brothers, how many of them played back in the 80s together?
Oh, there would be 3, I think, yeah. There would be 3, I think.
But
someone mentioned...
more.
I'm not 100%, to be honest with you. I'm not 100%. Someone mentioned the Murphys from Glenmorden as well. Alan, who came on the last 2 All-Ireland finals.
There was 4 of them on the team. I'm just looking at an article here on the Kilkenny People. I'm just going to try and find more details, but you work with it.
Yeah, so the Murphys would probably have had 3 playing if Alan was still involved, because he came on the last 2 All-Ireland finals, but he's not involved this year. So it's just Shane and Owen involved, and then you obviously have the Blanches involved as well. But yeah, bit of a mad one. The 4 Fenley names. What are the 4 Fenley names?
I'm looking for it.
Liam, Ger. Was there another Mick? Was there another Mick? No.
Oh, this article isn't delivering for me.
I tell you, it's amazing.
Okay, so in this article, it is saying he was one of 4 on the team in a certain starting 15. Look, I can't find all the details.
Kevin Fenley as well. Kevin was the goalie, I think. Kevin was the goalie. Obviously, he was Brian Cody's predecessor. Interesting one about Liam Fenley. Isn't Liam Fenley the only person to have lifted both the old and new Liam McCarthy Cup?
That sounds about right, actually, yeah.
Yeah, I think he is.
Really unofficial Kildare says, I can tell you one thing, Kildare fans are under no illusion how poor we are and how difficult next Sunday is going to be against Wicklow. Wicklow put it up to us last year for 60 minutes. Westmeath play a brutal style of football, very hard to watch, says Liam Mako 1. Pewell 74, why are Wicklow so poor at GA? Always near the bottom of any GA list, and with a couple of people coming in with the studs up. Stockroom Jim says, full of West Brits, sure. Liam Mako 1, big rugby and soccer culture in Wicklow.
Yeah.
As a man of Wicklow lineage.
Yeah. Given the Wicklow's it's obviously a lot of you're looking at the likes of Bray and Gravestones, they're like massive suburbs to the city. Like there's massive population centres there. Bray
and really good clubs. Like, geez,
yeah.
Bray, the way they've the setup they have is unbelievable.
Yeah, Bray is savage. They're I would say they're making hay with what they have. Definitely from a hurling point of view. From a football point of view, probably much less so, I'd say, given the population that they have there. But yeah, like Wicklow are among that cohort with Westmeath as well, who have never won an All-Ireland. Is a decent, I think, is it the guts of about 14 counties altogether across hurling and football that have never won an All-Ireland. And like, obviously, you don't want to rain on their parade on their great days, but they're a hell of a long way away from it at the minute. But they're not a million miles away from producing a big upset next week. Like, they're coming up against a Kildare team that are 0-7 from Division 2, down Division 3 next year, and morale can't be as it needs to be. You just love to see Wicklow getting off to a good start in that game and forcing the issue, and not Kildare having them at arm's length after a blistering start or something like that. Keep it tight early on and make it as interesting as possible. Make them feel the pressure or feel the heat down the home straight if at all possible.
Richard Hogan out the Fennellys, Cavan, Ger and Liam would have been constant throughout the 80s. You have the Connollys as well from
Castlegar.
Yeah, Castlegar. David Reedy said recently that only 1 out of 13 players were against the split season in a recent chat among Clare players.
Well, believe it.
Season. Yeah. So Meath beat Longford in the championship 319 to 312 for a finish there. James Conlon scored 1-6, Owen Frayne 1-5, Jordan Morris 4, Keane McBride got a goal, plenty of other lads with a point each. On the other side, Jason Matthews 1-3 for Longford, Mark Hughes 1-2, Darren Gallagher 1-1, and a selection of other players on a point each. Then also Wexford, they put a bit of a beating on Carlow here, 419 to 8 points, and the main players in terms of doing scoring there, Sean Nolan 1-7, Mark Rossiter 2-2, Ben Brosnan scored 3, Jonathan Beelan, he scored a goal. Colm Hulton with 4 points for Carlow. So that's as comprehensive as it comes.
Yeah, the evergreen Ben Brosnan. Great to see him still going strong. I think you said in an interview last week with Donegal Boyle in the Indo, he just said that he was never a big drinker and he kind of got his diet kind of sorted out at a reasonably young age, and that does obviously massively help with your longevity, because you do see certain fellas maybe that might look after themselves well as maybe they might in the off season, and that can kind of eventually, they can kind of get away with that to a point, and then it will eventually take a year or two off your career towards the end of it. But that was a massive win for Wexford. I know Dara Foley was out for Carlow and Jordan Morrissey's in the States or whatever, and they were missing, I think there's a Kieran Moran as well with a cruise ship, but like that's a fair pace to now. And Wexford didn't like in the early stages of Division 4, weren't exactly lighting it up, but towards the end of it, they most certainly were, and they're bringing plenty of form into the quarter-final now as well.
Yeah, for sure. And just in terms of Cork beating Limerick 313 to 11 points there, the scoring was done largely by Chris Ogue-Jones, 1-2, Brian Hurley 4 points, Ian Maguire and Rory Dean, they scored a goal each. James Naughton scored 4 points for Limerick in reply. We're at that goal to the week time. Who's it going to be? No idea.
I thought it was harsh on Aidan McCarthy not getting the man of the match the other night from TG Carter. So he finished with 210. You could say maybe no, the first goal was put on for him, but the last one definitely, like, he got a good pass, but he took it on himself. I'd probably go with McCarthy, and it's funny, didn't start that semi-final against that league semi-final against Tipperary. Now he's realistically hitting frees first round of the championship, is he?
Well, who else would?
Yeah, unless they were putting Kelly back in and he was going to hit frees. Or Rogers took them at the start against Tipperary, but didn't take any the other night. So yeah, I go for Aidan McCarthy. Yeah.
Okay. I really should be bringing the goat up on screen. The cheek of me not to do it. So what, I think Adam Hogan probably deserves it. I know I was sort of talking about him inducing frees from the referee by going in, grabbing the hurley and throwing the arms up in the air, but I still thought he was excellent.
So, yeah, that's at least you've redeemed yourself somewhat to the Clare faithful. I'm sure to be delighted.
Look, I'm very popular in Clare.
From a football point of view, I'd be going with on a momentous day for Waterford football, I'd be going with Tom O'Connell. Like what a performance! And particularly he got the goals and got the scores when they needed them most down the stretch.
Yeah, so would I. Who else could you go for? So congrats to them, even though it hurts from a Tipperary point of view. Right, that's it from the show today. A reminder, we're brought to you by orgoretro.com. Use the promo code OurGame to get 15% off. Also, keep an eye out for the championship preview night we've got coming up in the Dome in Thurles. That's a couple of weeks away now.
That's this Saturday, Shane.
Was that this Saturday? Jesus,
that's this Saturday. So make sure it's firmly in your diary.
Yeah, sorry. The actual championship is 2 weeks away, but that's on this weekend. That's going to be a cracker. I can't believe I mixed that up. But anyway, that's it for me. Right, Michael, we'll chat to you later in the week.
Cheers, Shane.